And with that, greetings, Congressman Landsman, sir. I am Christopher Cooper, Christopher Michael Cooper II. I am reaching out to you from Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. I am a member of the 4th District, which is the state of Ohio, and also the state of West Virginia. I serve in the Delta Alpha chapter, which is in Montgomery County, Ohio, right there in Dayton. Simultaneously, I'm also a member of Mu Iota, which is here in Franklin County in Columbus, but I'm representing all of Ohio and West Virginia at large. Just a brief history about us. Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated was founded November 17th, 1911, by 4 founders. We are oftentimes seen as the greatest collective of African American thinkers ever assembled. Our cardinal principles are manhood, scholarship, perseverance, and uplift. We are a Christian organization of college-educated men. We are not exclusively Black. However, we are predominantly African American. We welcome every man who is worthy to our brotherhood. And with that, from all of Omega, I would like to say thank you for coming here. Graciously and humbly, thank you for taking out your time to speak with us. What I would like to do first,
thank you for including me,
is just let you give us a quick understanding and background of yourself, sir. Go right ahead.
Well, I appreciate you all allowing me to come on and talk with you, tell you a little bit about myself and this this congressional race. My name is Greg Landsman. I'm a father. My wife and I have 2 school-aged children. My daughter Maddie is 12 years old and is in 7th grade. My son Elijah is 10 and is in 5th grade. So that's obviously a big part of, who I am. And
Absolutely.
And then I was a teacher. My parents were teachers. I grew up in a education, a focused household, and believed and still do in the importance of working with young kids, young people, and making sure that every child, every young person, particularly those who have been marginalized and left out, have every opportunity, if not more, to be successful. And so that's been my career. And outside of teaching, I led a ballot measure with this really broad coalition of folks here in Cincinnati. We worked with folks in Dayton too, in the same year to pass in Dayton and in Cincinnati what we call the Preschool Promise, which provides in Cincinnati 2 years of quality preschool for 3 and 4-year-olds. In Dayton, I believe it was 1. Hopefully we'll get to 2. But it means that, for the vast majority of children, Preschool Promise 2016 passed it. The vast majority of children in Cincinnati didn't have access to 2 years of quality preschool, which makes a huge difference in terms of whether or not they show up to kindergarten prepared academically, emotionally, behaviorally, all that stuff. And so, I worked really hard for several years to get it on the ballot and to get it passed. And it's been, a huge success here. It's been a success in Dayton. We're now one of the first places in the country to provide 2 years of quality preschool, and kids are showing up prepared. And it's really addressing, one of the great inequities that has to do with children and what they do or don't get in those early years when the vast majority of brain development is occurring. So the next year I ran for city council at large, representing the whole city, because, while there are certain things that need to happen in terms of improvements to the school day, what really needs to get done in order to make Cincinnati an infinitely better place for every single child. It has to do with access to prenatal care, child care, whether or not young people have, activities and good paying jobs with career pathways, whether or not there's housing stability and people can afford rent or their mortgage payments, whether or not wages are in a good place. And so that's been my focus, along with core services, public safety, sanitation, paving roads, just making sure government works and works for everybody. And then I really love local politics, but have been very concerned about what's happening nationally. And January 6th was for me uh, when things started to sort of change in my head, my own mind, in terms of what I should be working on. I love working with folks here in Cincinnati and want to continue that. But I also want to be in a position to really help protect our democracy. What happened on
Mhm.
January 6th with the insurrection, our congressman, his name is Representative Shabbat. He, voted right after, this violent attack on the Capitol. He voted with the
Mhm.
insurrectionists and to try to overturn, an American election.
Okay.
And I don't want that person representing this region, our city, any longer. And I'm very nervous about the future of our democracy and whether or not all of our votes will count. So I decided to run for Congress a year ago. We announced either on January 5th or 6th, it was a year after, and believe very strongly that we need a majority in Congress that will pass electoral election reforms, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, and a host of other things that will really secure our democracy for every single person and protect it from people who are trying to undermine it. So that's really the core of why I decided to run. Now, um, outside of that, I am really fired up to give this region a member of Congress that is focused entirely on them. The person I'm running against has been in Congress for a very long time, gets more corporate PAC money than just about anyone. So as a
Okay.
result, he votes with them a lot,
Okay.
and at our expense. So whether it's voting against lowering prescription drug prices, insulin, for example,
Mhm.
refusing to cap the cost of insulin, refusing to, put any restrictions on assault weapons, to protect our communities. The list goes on and on. Healthcare just goes on and on. And so it's a great opportunity to finally give this region a member of Congress that's just going to fight for them.
Sure. So that brings us to a kind of an interesting junction. And so I kind of like to start at a higher level and kind of work my way down,
Okay.
kind of referring back to January 6th. For us and the community that I represent, as a taxpayer, as a Christian, as an American, and also as a person of color, um, January 6th looks very different, looks very dangerous to me. And it is also the atmosphere was charged with a tinge of a type of hatred that to us sends out a lot of red flags. I'm sure you recall that at one point in time we saw people even carrying nooses, which has a lot of derogatory meaning within my community. And so to kind of bring the conversation, within context, um, with the current nature of the divisive politics that you'll come up against, one of the things that I think that's very important in our community is, are you willing to take a stance and be, vocal about what is ultimately wrong, or one of the more passive aggressive senators who, after the fact, will say, well, yeah, they probably shouldn't have done that. But at the moment, failed to speak on behalf of myself, my community, and so many people like me who saw that.
Yeah, it's such an important question, and I'm really glad you asked it.
Mhm.
Very vocal. So, I mean, one, there's nothing passive about me. I'm a big believer that you work for those things you believe in, and then you
Mhm.
just tail off for those things, right? Uh,
Sure.
I've got I've got a couple of tattoos. One of them is believe right here, which is you gotta the things you work on, you gotta believe in at your core, and then you
Excellent.
just gotta never give up until you get it done. So it's just part of who I am. It's also, I love public service and the promise of what we can do in politics, and collective work. Um, and I struggle with the folks that sort of hedge or try to play the politics or, all that other
Mhm.
stuff. For me, it's, just tell people what you believe in and fight for it and, let the chips fall as they may. And then just
Excellent.
on this particular issue, I just I I watched. I'll never forget where I was on January 6th. It was one of the most awful things I've ever seen in my
Mhm.
life in terms of something that was happening to my country and to a place that I revered and that I used to work in. And I remember the nooses. I remember the fact that there was, at least one person with a Confederate flag. Like that's
Mhm.
never happened in the Capitol. Even during the Civil War, no one walked
Was
through
able
that.
to get that flag in there.
Um, and I think it went all the way to the floor of the Senate. I mean, so it
Yes, sir.
was one of, the most egregious displays of white supremacy and people lost their lives. I mean, it was a violent attack on the Capitol.
It
And
was.
if we don't have people who not just speak out against it and then fight for those things that will protect our democracy, um, we are going to lose this. Maybe not permanently, but for years, if not decades. And 2022 is going to be critically important in terms of electing the right people to ensure that there isn't another coup attempt in 2024. Uh,
Absolutely.
and so I'm very passionate about it, and to the extent where like the person that I'm running against who voted to overturn the election voted with these folks. I have said to there are two members actually from this area. One voted with the insurrectionists and Trump, and the other one didn't. And I've said to Republicans and other folks, if you want to, I get that you're conservative and you want to help some of these conservatives. Pick somebody who didn't vote to overturn this election, who didn't side with those folks who attacked the Capitol. But
Absolutely.
if people side with the folks who cross that line, then
Mhm.
analyzing their behavior, even if it's with like, you know, any number of things. In any event, I feel very strongly that that behavior has to be so resoundingly rejected
Okay.
that, so that it never happens again.
Interesting. Now, one of the things that I would tell you is that, of course, as a community, conservative politics have not served us well. We saw the previous administrations, we saw the past president essentially label our young brothers and sisters in Black Lives Matter as terrorists. We saw a mischaracterization of that. We also saw a noticeably, different treatment in how children from Black Lives Matter were treated, in how uh, our protests and when we stood up and when we voiced it, how we were treated and how we were received. Keep in mind that within this organization itself, there are brothers who were the mentors to Martin Luther King. Even now, Senator Clyburn is a member of this organization, and we stand behind him vehemently. At the same time, one of the things that is uniquely concerning to anyone right now is that it's very clear why, as a community, we would not support this behavior. And many times in conservative circles, the things that ultimately put us at a disposition. However, the other challenge that we face in our community is that we will oftentimes get to hear from Democrats, be it a president, a mayor, a governor, and they will beg and pander for our votes. Only then will we stand up, we show up, we come out and we vote for you. And sometimes we have to vote for the lesser of two evils. Like my mother, my father generation, members of the baby boomer generation, always vote Democrat. And yet the concern that I see amongst millennials, baby boomers, the remainder of the silent generation and this upcoming generation is that after we vote, we oftentimes feel as if we've been forgotten, neglected, or just used for a vote. And so I would ask you, if our community should support you, what could we expect from you as it pertains to our community?
Another great question. So a couple of things. One is accessibility. So one of the things that I'm known for as a local elected official is just always being out in the community. I try to go to every event I can, and in part because I love it, but also it's where I learn the most, and I have the best I get the best understanding of what is needed of me.
Mm-hmm.
People I respond to every email that comes in. I probably can't always do that, but I'm going to keep doing it as long as I can.
Okay.
I give people my cell phone, and I want to be as accessible as humanly possible. And then my team, to me, you can ask anyone who's ever worked for me. The number one priority is to make sure that everyone who calls the office or walks
Mm-hmm.
into the office or emails us, they get treated like, um, they get treated the way that you would want a family member treated,
Sure.
with the highest level of respect and kindness, and so that they always remember, maybe I didn't get, they couldn't solve my problem, or maybe they helped, but always, they were so caring and they made me feel valuable. And I'll always go back and call and make sure I call Landsman's office, because those are the folks who want to help the most. That's one. Two
Okay.
is, I have I, I think a pretty long history of getting things done, which to me is the most important things. It's like having politicians tell you what they are going to do is one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not they actually go do them is something else. And I've always gone and done what I said I was going to do. And
Okay.
so,
Do you have anything in mind specifically?
yeah, I mean, one of the things was like I set out, on this like quest to make sure that every kid in my city got 2 years of quality preschool.
That's
And
very important.
yeah, we got it passed, and now they do.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
And that's commendable. I have family members who own daycares here in Franklin
Yeah.
County, and I definitely understand the importance of that fundamental education and nutrition component. So kudos to you on that, and I can definitely see how that would impact our community. Go right ahead. Is there anything else that you would be looking to do specifically that my community would find beneficial?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that matters most, I mean, in addition to voting to protect our democracy and
Hmm.
pass John Lewis Voting Rights Act, and making sure that um, that we are empowering every voter, period,
Okay.
and making it easy for everyone to vote, no matter where you live,
Okay.
and every election is protected. In addition to that, and codifying Roe, and ensuring that all of these rights that we've achieved over the course of however many decades aren't taken away from us, I think we need a Congress that will do two things: work really hard to get wages up, and work just as hard to get costs down. So to me, those are the
Mhm.
most important sets of votes, where we are finally doing everything we need to ensure that working folks, middle class folks, are seeing better wages,
Mhm.
uh, and the cost of all of the things that are critical, are going down,
Okay.
because
What
if
were your thoughts on gerrymandering and changing the districts around?
so part of the election reform that I hope we vote on will be the end of gerrymandering in the United States.
Okay, splendid. That is definitely good to hear. And more specifically, I said I want to be sure that we get so much in. Gun rights for us is a very unique thing. It's a very
Yeah.
unique topic. Within our community, it is an age-old problem. Myself, being raised in the 80s, I had the experience of living in three different parts of the country, all of which were notably and negatively affected by gun violence. I
Yeah.
feel like more recently it's come back to the forefront because unfortunately, men walk into schools and gatherings with the AR-15 and essentially execute innocent people. But in my community, it has been a problem from as far back as the early 80s to the drive-by shooting. There's a proliferation of guns that came through for any number of reasons as the drug culture expanded. And now we're seeing a generation of kids who really don't have a good sense of mortality. And so
Mm.
gun violence has always been something that's plagued us. Um, do you have any stance or anything that you look to do as it pertains to gun violence, even more so outside of the extreme where we see people being cut down in a grocery store, but even just in urban areas where it's always been a problem?
Yeah, this is a really important issue for me too. The first thing I said was, I'm a dad and I got school age kids. My kids go to school every
Mm,
day, and to say that I'm not scared, it would be lying. I get scared. Who isn't? And I also represent, a city, a great city that has way too much gun violence every
mm,
day, and I've seen the impact of it. So in any event, it's to me a very serious, important issue that we've got to tackle in Congress, in state legislatures. But I think it starts with getting all the gun lobby money out of politics. I don't
mhm.
think politicians can take money from the gun manufacturers and make good decisions based on what's best for communities and schools, even law enforcement. They're going to do what's best for the gun manufacturers, and
Mhm.
gun manufacturers make a lot of money off of these, military style assault weapons.
The
And
AR-15.
yeah, and there's 20 million of them in the United States, and it is a serious, serious problem that undermines communities and schools, children, law enforcement, and so the thing about the Second Amendment that I think is really important is that it speaks to a well-regulated militia, and so folks. I grew up in a community where people had guns, and they were very safe and thoughtful about their guns, and still feel strongly that that is something that needs to be protected. Uh, the well-regulated part suggests that we should be doing everything in our power to ensure that folks who have a criminal history um,
Cannot be.
can't get the weapons. Uh,
Mhm.
and that is just good policy.
Mm.
And that if there are folks who, get into trouble and violent, trouble, then they have to give up their weapons.
For
Uh,
sure. You
and yeah, so empowering communities and law enforcement to get these guns out of our neighborhoods is, to me, one of the more important things that Congress has to do.
Sure. And I think about, just more, one of the things that just kind of stays on my mind, I think about the large caliber pistols. I think about the AR-15. And, I often hear that it's for hunting purposes. But, I think we may need to look at just potentially getting rid of the gun, because I think that the more simple question is, why do you need that big automatic rifle to hunt Bambi? Like, Bambi has no gun, he runs, he jumps. That's pretty much it. And then you get, you arm yourself like Rambo to hunt Bambi. And when they can't do that, people get angry, and then they have military grade weaponry. But the thing that I always hear is that it's for hunting. But why do you need all that gun for Bambi?
Yeah, I mean, you don't. So,
So,
and to me, I think about it this way. Like, oftentimes, I think good policy that gets you really good results includes answering the question, well, like, what's best for children?
mhm,
I mean, and if you do something that's going to be really good for children, it's probably going to be great for adults, everybody. If
absolutely.
if you do things that may be good for some adults but could be really bad for children, it's usually bad policy. And I just, to me, we've got too many young people um, in schools, in our communities being gunned down, and they come first.
Okay. Now, what I would ask you when we talk about the different communities that make up our community, in its entirety, um, right there in Cincinnati, we do have a very large chapter. Greetings to the brothers of Beta Iota. They will see this first, and that's a very large chapter. A lot of great friends there. What would you like to see be more balanced right there in the greater Cincinnati area?
Oh my gosh, what a great question. I mean, to me, getting wages up so that incomes are rising across the board, but in particular in Black and Brown communities, small businesses, Black and Brown owned businesses, and increasing the number of opportunities, both in terms of what the city's doing, but also just what's happening in the city of Cincinnati. Those are two big things that I've been working on, and we're starting to see, some movement, but it takes some time, and we need a Congress that's going to help communities like ours make progress more quickly. Housing and housing stability is a huge one in the city of Cincinnati. I mean, not just helping to get rents down, but making it easier for people to afford their mortgage or go get a home, and being able to get that down payment so that they can do what you and I were talking about earlier, which is make that one big part of the American dream come true.
Absolutely.
And the other piece is obviously it has to do with children, so eliminating the disparities in birth outcomes by ensuring every single expecting mother has access to high quality prenatal care, making sure that everybody can afford high quality child care so that they can work and in good paying jobs, and they're not having to worry about what's going on with their children. Those are some of the biggest issues that we're working on here in Cincinnati.
Okay. So one of the things I would want to speak to is the fact that here within the state of Ohio, there are a lot of women who go to the hospital to deliver children. And unfortunately, within our community, what we see oftentimes is the rate of death at that moment of giving birth is very high. Is there anything that you guys have planned or have considered to potentially combat that issue and the loss of life that we're seeing when women are delivering their children?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, we've been doing some, not enough, I guess is the right answer. We have been doing some work with our hospitals and with Children's Hospital in Cincinnati in particular
Mhm.
around improving birth outcomes.
Mhm.
And we have seen some things proven to work in terms of, really high quality prenatal care,
Okay.
including emotional supports, so that, when our expecting mothers are about to have their babies, they're in really healthy positions. And, that's the big, investment we're making.
Okay. And so I kind of want to conclude this. Keep in mind that really and truthfully, from anywhere, any one of our chapters here in Ohio and West Virginia, you will find that, like you, we are educators. Predominantly, the number one occupation here in the fourth district is pastor. And so trust and honesty is a very big thing for us. I will kind of tie my questions in, and it's one, do you have a track record of really looking forward to helping our community? Once we vote for you, can we trust you to continue to do that? And then what are the things you want us to remember about you on the day that we go to support you, if we should make that decision?
That's such a good question. Yeah, so the answer is yes. To the trust piece, it's a huge piece for me. Um, I don't think I mentioned this, but I have a master's in theological studies, and
I did
so
read that about you.
yeah, I did a lot of work around the governor's office of faith-based and community initiatives, where
Mhm.
we partnered with churches, and other faith groups all over the state to provide food and educational opportunities for folks including folks that were coming back from a period of incarceration, to make sure that everyone gets back on their feet after that. I think if you ask anyone in Cincinnati and you look at my track record, I am a worker. I get things done, from preschool to, housing stability. And I helped set up the first eviction prevention fund here in Cincinnati, which has kept thousands of people in their homes, massive increases in youth jobs, changing our development policies to incentivize affordable housing, local jobs, good paying jobs, the inclusion of small businesses, particularly minority owned small businesses. So it's a big part of who I am. And so that's not going to change. If elected to Congress, those would be the issues I work on, and I'll do everything in my power to not just work on those issues, but to actually deliver results, which is when you actually help people. And so, I think, past is somebody's past is important to keep in mind in terms of what you might expect them to do in the future. And I've got a good track record of always coming through and being somebody that folks trust, because, I have always kept my word.
Excellent. So these are all excellent points.
Yeah, I think the last question is a great one. I hope that everyone, knows that, like, I care deeply. And I know I'm one of those people that wants to vote for somebody who I know cares about me. And so that's what I hope people know when they go in and vote, is I care deeply about you.
Excellent. Okay. Well, like I said, keep in mind, we are a collective of doctors and lawyers, executives, engineers, pastors and soldiers, coaches, leaders, and we are involved in everything, everywhere. The floor is yours. If there's anything you want us to know or anything that you felt that you wanted to say here at the conclusion, the floor is yours, and let the brotherhood know, please.
Well, a couple of things. One is thank you. This was fantastic. Great questions. I really appreciate the opportunity. Two, I'll do this any other, if you want me to come back, I'd love to do this again. Three, if folks want to learn more, they can go to landsmanforcongress.com. That's just LANDSMAN for Congress.com. All the, a lot of information, my bio, the issues, where I stand, how to get involved, all that's on the website. And then we're launching an effort that I hope people will participate in called find19voters.com. And people can go to find1919voters.com now, and they can register to, help get out the vote, so that, we are getting our friends and family members, coworkers, everyone we know that shares our values to vote, so that we start getting the elected officials that are going to work for us.